In today's lesson, we'll be learning about transformations of quadratics. If you recall, a quadratic relation can take on three different forms: standard form, vertex form, and factored form. In standard form, the a value told you if the parabola was opening up or down, and the c value told you the y-intercept. In factored form, the a once again told you if the parabola was opening up or opening down, and the values within the brackets helped you determine the x-intercept. In vertex form, we found that the a value told us again if the parabola was opening up or down, and the h and k value was related to the coordinate of the vertex. Today we're going to be focusing on vertex form. Before we begin, let's review the most basic form of a quadratic relation, and that is y equals x squared. All of the transformations today are relative to this parabola. In vertex form, the variables of a, h, and k all mean something different. We're going to take a look at a first. If a is greater than 0, then the parabola opens upwards. In other words, this means that a is a positive value. Now, if a is less than 0, then the parabola opens downwards. In other words, it is reflected in the x-axis. And this means that the a value is negative. In this graph, you can see a red parabola and a blue parabola. In the red parabola, the value of a is positive, so it's greater than 0, which means it is opening upwards. In the blue parabola, the value of a is negative, which means it is less than 0, which means it is opening downwards, or it is being reflected in the x-axis. Now, if a is greater than -1 or greater than +1, then the parabola is stretched vertically. There's a little bit of a typo here. This shouldn't say widens, this should say narrows. Okay, and what exactly does this mean? Well, let's refer back to a number line. Okay, so that's 0, that's -1, and that's 1. If a is greater than +1, it is stretched vertically, and if it is greater than -1, it is also stretched vertically. In our graph, we have a red parabola as well as a blue parabola. For our blue parabola, you can see that the value of a is 2, which means a is greater than +1, which means the parabola is stretched vertically, which means it narrows. Now, if a is greater than -1 or less than 0, then the parabola is compressed vertically, and there's a little bit of a typo here. This should say widens. And if a is greater than 0 or less than +1, then the parabola is compressed vertically. And again, there's a little bit of a typo. That should say widens. What exactly does this mean? Well, here, this means you have a negative decimal or fraction. And down here, this means that you have a positive decimal or fraction. In our graph, we have a red parabola and a blue parabola. For our blue parabola, it has an a value of 1/2, which means a is greater than 0 and it is less than 1. In other words, we have a positive fraction or positive decimal, and this means we have a vertical compression, which means the parabola widens. At this point, we're going to take a closer look at the variable of h. Now, h is a little bit tricky because in vertex form, there's a negative sign in front of h. I want you just to look at the entire value of h, including the sign in front, okay? So in some cases, it will be negative. In some cases, it will be positive. So let's take a look at this. So if h is greater than 0, then the parabola is translated to the left. And this is a little bit counterintuitive because when you think positive, you think going to the right, but it actually translates to the left. So h greater than 0 basically means h is a positive value. Now, if h is less than 0, then the parabola translates to the right. Again, this is a little bit counterintuitive because when you have a negative number, you might think that you're going to the left, but in fact, it is translated to the right. What exactly does h less than 0 means? Well, it means that h is a negative value. In this graph, you can see a red parabola, a blue parabola, and a green parabola. In the blue parabola, the h value is greater than 0, which means it is positive. So it moves 2 units to the left. Now, for the green parabola, the h value is less than 0. Okay, so it is negative. When it is negative, it moves 2 units to the right. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the variable of k. Now, if k is greater than 0, then the parabola translates up, which means that if k is a positive value, the parabola moves up. And this is more intuitive. However, if k is less than 0, then the parabola translates down, so it moves down 2 units. In other words, if k is a negative value, the parabola moves downwards. In this graph, we have a red parabola, a blue parabola, and a green parabola. Let's take a look at the blue parabola. The blue parabola has a k value which is greater than 0, which means it is positive. And when it is positive, that means it moves up. Now, let's take a look at the green parabola. The green parabola has a k value of -2, which means k is less than 0, which means it is negative. If you have a negative k value, that means the parabola moves downwards.